Lovely, welcome back. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you all. I'm very excited about the next session because I've got Sarah Harbon, who's the General Manager of UK and Ireland at Benefit Cosmetics, and we've worked with Sarah for nearly a couple of years now, which is really, really wonderful. And Ian Watson, who's the Chief Exec of Unbound, Unbound Group PLC, but also Hotter Shoes. And I'm on a board with you when you went to Float earlier on this year. So we've got lots of exciting things to talk about in retail. Ian, I'm going to start with you because Hotter Shoes and then coming into Unbound has gone through a massive transformation in the last couple of years. And you've kind of led the business through this, your wonderful factory. And the transformation is very much about a people transformation as well as a delivery and product. Tell us a little bit about what you've done to help and support your people through that transformation.
Yeah, well, so good morning, everyone. I think people has been at the centre of everything that we've done. So during COVID, we experienced a very difficult time, as all retailers did, and a similar story to Sarah. And we closed a significant number of our retail stores during the pandemic, and we went from having 82 stores down to having 17 stores. And it was kind of a mix for our organisation. So retail was closed, so our staff were furloughed. However, we have a manufacturing facility in the northwest of England, in Skelmersdale, but we also have 75% of our business is e-commerce. So our distribution centre worked every day during the pandemic. The factory, apart from lockdown 1, continued to operate, and the rest of the business were furloughed. So that developed a bit of a challenge, actually, so that the people who were furloughed felt that they were kind of unloved in the business and were not communicated perhaps as much as other people. And the people who were working were thinking, look at all these great guys who get to get a free holiday for the best part of 6 months. So the people element was quite critical, and as people came back into the office, we've tried to break down those barriers between certainly the shop floor and the management group, and we've been successful in doing that through our culture of continuous improvement. So we keep talking around how this business needs to continue to improve to be a viable business, but equally we talk quite a lot with the factory guys about we're the only major footwear manufacturer in the UK. We're talking to the people about how on your drive to work today, did you drive past Adidas or did you drive past the Nike factories? And they say, no, don't be silly, and they make all of the products in the Far East. And I say, why do you do that? And they say, well, it's cheaper, isn't it? I go, so we're either really clever or they're really stupid, and which one is it? And therefore we've born our culture around this continuous improvement and continual marginal gains. And as we've become a PLC, one of the things we were very keen to do was to make everybody in our business a shareholder. So we gave everybody shares in our business, and we have also developed a very lucrative share save scheme, which people are now really starting to understand the difference between actually coming to work but actually driving value in our business and taking away the things that really don't add any value. And on the back of that, we've invested quite heavily in training. So we, particularly in something called Lean or Six Sigma, we went from scratch at the beginning of the pandemic. We've now got over 100 people who are certified in that area, and basically, very simply, taking waste out of the system. But that's kind of overrunning into our ESG strategies. So again, people understand how putting waste into a shoebox is not only affecting the environment, but it's also adding cost to the product, which that they can eliminate. So we've been breaking down those barriers, I think, and ensuring that everybody's involved within the business has a role to play. So it's been quite a significant change.
And just very briefly, that's led to growth. What's your growth been in the last?
Yes, so in the first quarter we've grown revenues by 12%. Last year we grew over 18%. So the business is going in the right direction, and our profitability. We had over a £6 million swing in profitability last financial year, and we're on plan for this year. So it's working, and people understand it.
Brilliant, thank you. Laughter is the best philosophy. Laughter is the best cosmetic. That's at the very heart of Benefit. Tell us how that's helped you. Tell us how that sits at the very heart of Benefit, and how you as their kind of leader use that to really motivate your people to create the culture.
Yeah, sure. Morning, everyone. Laughter is the best cosmetic has been a Benefit philosophy since day dot, really, in the 70s, because we know that we're not saving lives, and I think the last 2 years has brought that into stark focus, that there's a purpose of cosmetics in life, but it's not the be all and end all, and that's a very anti-commercial philosophy to have, really, because of course all commercial philosophies should be about making money, delivering profit, etc. We just want people to feel really good about being around the brand, and at every touch point, that whether that be a transaction online or whether it be with one of our teams on counter, being managed as an employee, we want people to feel really good about that. And actually, one of the things that happened over the pandemic, a similar but different story actually to Ian, because we closed a huge amount of stores as well. We tried to navigate through COVID, as everybody in the room did as well. And in the midst of all of that, our second largest retailer went into administration. And let me tell you, laughter really was not the best cosmetic that day. Alcohol was a very good substitute. But we've got to keep our people at the centre of all of the things that we try and achieve on a day-to-day basis. So when all of that happened, we realised that people were drifting from the centre, from the core purpose of the brand, and that's because lots of them were at home. All of our store teams were at home. We probably had only about 15% of the workforce, the full UK and Irish workforce, who were actually not furloughed, and that's because the majority of our teams work on counter. So the senior leadership team decided that for the first time ever, which is daft really, that we would try and put our purpose into a mission statement. And the mission statement became that we wanted to be a company, a brand that built a beauty community for all, dedicated to doing good and feeling good. And that was something that everybody could achieve, whether you're paying a bill in accounts or whether you're serving a woman on counter. That interaction should make the other person feel good, and it kept everybody really thinking about how they were doing the things that they were doing, not just what they were doing. Now, during the first year of lockdowns, obviously the Black Lives Matter campaign started to grow a much greater voice, which was absolutely the right thing to do in really tragic circumstances. And one of the things that we did, a really small thing that we did on our mission statement, although it was always there, beauty community for all, we've elevated the colours that pops in, so that we really make sure that people know that all of the words of the mission statement aren't equal. So the beauty community for all is really, really important, and we're still not where we need to be. We're absolutely not where we need to be. I'm not sat on the stage saying, and we've got it all right, because we absolutely haven't. But what we are doing now is making sure that that's a constant conversation. It's at the table. It's ever present in the conversations that we're having.
Yeah, I can see that, and it's it's taking the difficult times and the easy times, but actually having that mission and that culture, pushing it through the business on an ongoing basis. In Unbound, so Unbound is the kind of future of the business, and it's very much focused on the over 50s, 55s, which is a fascinating segment. But you're wrapping it up in a kind of bigger philosophical kind of way of life as well. Tell us a little bit about what that's going to look like.
Yeah, so our hotter business is comfort footwear, for those of you who don't know it, and our age group of customers is predominantly 50 plus, and we think there's a real opportunity for an engaging brand who can speak to consumers as though they are still living their life to the full, because when you get to 50, life doesn't end. And trust me, I've got 2 weeks left in my 40s, so I'm kind of worried about it. But you'd be surprised by how many emails that you get. And actually, if you go and Google over 50, over 55s and images, what you will get is you'll get funeral plans, you will get stair lifts, and you will get all sorts of things that you really don't think exist as products and services. And I'm not quite ready for that yet, right?
No, do you know what? On that, I got a call about a funeral plan this week. I was so horrified, I put the phone down.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm inundated with these things. And actually, so we went out there and we said, right, okay, what is the gap? And there's a huge gap, right? So every high street retailer as well is walking away from this age group. And actually, this age group is materially underserved online. They're extremely tech savvy. and it's the highest area of personal wealth and income. And actually, as you look about it, as we enter a period with 9% inflation probably going higher, that actually this age group are going to be the people who have the money, right? And therefore, we looked at this and said, right, how do we create a brand, and how do we work with a number of partners, but in an engaging way? So the main element that we're going to base it on is around comfort. So when people are comfortable within themselves, you know, is a key area for us. So we're at the process of now developing a partnership strategy. We're going to launch our Unbound website on the 28th of July for all of those of you, put that in your calendar. We're going to launch with around 6 complementary brands, and we're going to start within footwear and apparel, but then we're moving quite quickly into wellness, because we see the wellness space as being a huge opportunity for us, and actually the ability to move well, feel good and do more is the cornerstone of what we're doing. So we see lots of complementary spaces around that, and yeah, it's pretty exciting, a little bit fraught.
Yes.
But yeah, we're heading towards the 28th of July at pace.
Brilliant. So I love that kind of move well.
Yeah, feel good.
Feel good.
Do more.
Do more. That could kind of sit at the heart of what you've got at Benefit as well, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, you take the well-being of your people very seriously,
Yep.
partly because it fits very well with the brand, doesn't
Yep.
it? But actually, you've done a lot of tangible things to help your people, not just in the last couple of years, but all the time. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you've been doing.
I mean, such a huge amount. It really started to accelerate during COVID, and the times that we couldn't be with our people. We're really conscious that when people aren't with you, that's probably when they're most at risk as far as their well-being is concerned, because you're not able to spot the things that you would normally in a corridor. You think they didn't probably say hello as enthusiastically as they normally do. And I always probably feel more in conversations than people say, and I found that was really tricky for me then to manage and to lead through those moments when I couldn't be with everybody. We've always had a culture club at Benefit. At the office, you know, first day spring, daffodils on the table, not just on one table like on the reception table, but literally daffodils on everyone's table.
Love
Easter
that.
eggs, Taytos for anyone who's Irish in the room, Tayto crisps on St Patrick's Day, and you know, we really tried to embrace any moment to make people feel good about being at work, because it's where we spend most of our time. There's such a huge amount that we were doing, and then when everything closed down and we couldn't be with everybody, I'd been working with Suki already. Suki's literally the most persuasive woman I have ever met. So Suki came to me when the Let's Reset book was being done and said, would you be part of this project? And I said, I don't know, what is the project? And she said, just turn up on this day, this is all we need you to do. There we are, page 53. My mum told me to say that. But actually the book is brilliant, because what it shows to you is that lots of the speakers actually who are here today are in the book, and they all talk about, or a lot of them talk about tough times that they've had. And you think that people who are CEOs, managing directors, GMs, must have got, oh, there it is, as if this picture wasn't big enough, sorry about this. But you know, people think that, often we think that people who are in really high profile jobs get there seamlessly. And quite a lot of the stories that are in the Let's Reset book talk about burnout, and they talk about failure quite a lot. And it's really, really important that people at certain ages and certain points of their career understand that. So that was a real light bulb on moment for me, where I thought about the impact. If I ever write a book, by the way, write it down, and you know, I should copyright it, but if I ever write a business book, it will be what I wish I was told when I was like 20. I wish somebody had told me this, because I probably could have got to where I am now much faster. And I heard the last few moments of Yvonne's talk earlier, and she said that she didn't go to university, and neither did I. So all of my work experience is literally just that, it's experience. I didn't learn business through a spreadsheet. I learned it by doing it and learning and failing and moving on again. So when lockdown happened, Suki and I got on the phone together, and the 7 Needs of Wellbeing was the first place that we started, because people were starting to feel really shaky at home, but all of them for different reasons. And depending on whether you're furloughed or not furloughed, quite often, like the people who weren't furloughed weren't able to look after their sense of self. Their self-care was very low. People who were furloughed had got very high self-care scores because, you know, they were spending time with their families on beaches, in gardens, in the hot weather, etc. But they were feeling that they weren't connected, that they had no sense of purpose, and that the business didn't care about them. So we started there, and then we just kept going. We kept layering over the top of it. We did financial workshops for our teams. We did, you know, Wellbeing. We did some psychology work with Suki and the team. But it can't stop, because your business is nothing without its people, and keeping your people well is actually really, really smart business decision. And when I did the book, you know, we were talking about well-being, and the quote that's blown out on my page is, you know, business leaders are dinosaurs if they don't do this. Which, of all of the things I said on that day, I didn't think that was going to be the thing that would get its own font, but it did. But I believe it today more than ever. Who knew when we did that book that
I know, and it's changed so much in the last couple of years, hasn't it? Yeah,
Massively.
Absolutely. And I think it's a quote that actually people use a lot now in their organisations.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that, Sarah. We're going to, you know, to your point about, you know, leaders not being infallible, leaders being open. We've talked about this already, and I'm going to go a little bit personal now, because, you know, Ian, I know you don't, I know you don't like the kind of emotional stuff, but you are, for me, you know, that kind of classic driving CEO. You have endless energy. You power through stuff. I can't believe from board meeting to board meeting we go, oh, he's never going to have done all of that. It's all done. But I think it was 2 years ago, you had a heart condition that was pretty extensive. You ended up in hospital. Tell us a little bit about how you dealt with that.
Yeah, so, hey. Cool. Is there any paramedics in the room, actually, just in case, you know, I got a bit jittery telling you? No. So Sarah nailed it then, you know, that the way to get through it was alcohol, right? So the first pandemic, and there's a couple of people who know me in the audience, and I like to drink, right? You know, if there was a party, I'd be first in, I'd be last to leave. And I thought, you know, I'm infallible. And I went to do a park run with my then 5-year-old junior park run. It was nothing very excessive. And I couldn't keep up with her. And I thought, shit, is what I thought, actually. And I thought, okay, I went to see a doctor. They said, have you got a high-stress job? Do you drink too much? I said, yes and yes. And they said, okay, well, you need to chill out. And I thought, okay, I'll go and see someone who knows what they're doing. And I subsequently went in central London, and I had a heart scan, and they said, your heart's at 17% output. And I went, okay, that's pretty good then, isn't it? And they said, no, it should be 70. And I said, okay, so give me some tablets. I need to crack on. I've got some things to do. And they said, no, you're going straight to hospital. And I went into the hospital, and I subsequently spent 4 weeks in Harefield Hospital on the transplant ward, where they thought I needed a heart transplant. And I'd only popped out for what I thought was a checkup. So I called my wife and said, you're not going to believe this, but I'm in Harefield Hospital and I'm on the transplant ward. And you can imagine the reaction you get. I got a 4-month-old baby, and, you know, all sorts of things go through your mind. And I went through that process, and thankfully I didn't need a transplant. And as I sit here today, my heart output is close to 60, so I've made a full recovery. But that kind of puts everything into perspective. I think, you know, the key thing for me is that you can't do everything yourself. And that was a key learning for me, because I'm pretty hands-on. I'm in the detail, as Suki said. You're in for a shock next board meeting, because I've not done everything I said I was going to. I've been pretty tied up. But then you start and you try, and for me it's quite difficult. You try and work on the things that matter.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it gives you much more empathy for the people. Right, because you realise that you're human as well. And actually, you know, some of the best stories we have in our organisation are around the people on the shop floor. And I love our factory people incredibly. We've spent a lot of time training them, but then when you hear stories and problems they've gone through, your problems are irrelevant, right? You know, we had one guy on our factory who lived with his grandfather. His grandfather died, and he was living in local authority accommodation. They took the house away. He was living on the streets. We said, right, okay, we can't have that. We sorted that out. We found him an apartment. We put the guarantee in place, things like that. So again, and there's lots of things that we're trying to do with the people. So I think that personal journey just makes you think this is not the be all and end all, and trying not to live through the highs and lows quite so much, which is quite tricky as a CEO.
Yeah.
you know, and the low's the low and the high's are high for me. So I've tried to stay away from negative people is one of the key things. If people give me 10 reasons why they can't do it, please go and work somewhere else, because this is not the organisation we're trying to build now. We've got to get going. And therefore, we're trying to change it a little bit, but it certainly had a material effect.
Yeah.
On
And
me.
you don't drink very
I
much
don't
anymore?
drink, no, unfortunately.
What other things have you done to now sort of manage that? So you talked about the mental well-being.
Yeah.
What about the kind of physical sleep, other things you've done?
Yeah, so again, I started off really well, right? So if you had the lifestyle I had, so I was certainly not vegetarian or vegan, so typical mid-40s, you know, getting out of shape. So, you know, I'm a little bit fitter than I was. I try and avoid red meats and try. My wife is very vegan, so the only time I step off that train is when I'm not at home, which is great. So I've been traveling for 8 days. I won't tell you what my diet's been, but it's probably not on the health kick. The no alcohol bit, I've got it now. It's only when you stop drinking you realise, you know, it's not that cool actually. You know, you notice people and you think, God, I used to be him. It's also a bit boring, let's be honest,
Yeah,
right?
boring.
So I'm trying to find that happy medium.
There's a bit of a balance.
Yeah, there is a bit of a balance you've got to find. But yeah, just trying to live a little bit more purposefully, I think, is a critical thing. And you realise that, you know, your kids, you're not going to be around forever, so just making sure that you spend the time that you can.
Yeah, and you're good at doing that.
Yeah, trying to.
Yeah. If you've got any questions, please put them up, because we'll see them here, or stick your arm in the air. Sarah, and I know this is tough to talk about. I can see it in your eyes already. But so you lost a very good friend at Christmas time, Andrew, or Croc, as you call him. You know, I know that was a very personal loss for you and your family. I always marvel, particularly at you, but lots of people who are leading a business. You're a mum, you're a wife, you're, you know, trying to support this family as well because they're great friends. How do you cope with that? How much do you share with that when you're going through it in a business environment?
I would say all of it. You know, I expect my teams to try and bring all of themselves to work so that I can manage all of that. There's so much that we don't know about people that we're, you know, managing, working next to. And we've recently done a diversity, well, we've got now, it's an inclusion group actually, but we had one of our first meetings last week, and the only question I asked everybody to share was, why are you here? And the level of declaration, if you like, that people gave at that point was huge.
Wow.
Huge. And very, very tough going. You know, for the first 3 hours when everyone just spoke, and we said to everyone, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but it just came pouring out. And then of course, as soon as you hear one person speak, then the next person really wants to give their full self to that as well. I felt like I needed to have a lie down at lunchtime. I'm not going to lie. I mean, that was hard going, but you know, I think what it made it clear to me, and I have not broken any of those confidences, even to their managers that came out in that room. But I just said to all of my leadership team, you do not have any clue who you are managing. So you really need to bear that in mind. And you don't need to know the detail, but all you have to be aware is that there's a huge amount that you are managing. I'm really open with my senior leadership team if I need time. You know, they've been brilliant during the last couple of months. And some days are just better than others. But as I said right at the very beginning, we have to bear in mind, and, you know, I really hear what Ian's saying about the highs are highs and the lows are low. You know, business isn't what it was in the 90s. There's an underbelly, there's an undercurrent of some quite pernicious, you know, attitudes towards brands. There's a very, very low tolerance for getting anything wrong. Delete Instagram is what I would say. Don't read it. You know, it's a very, very, it can be a very, very joyful and toxic environment at the same time. And, you know, I think we've all seen that, or, you know, read pieces that come out of that. But during the low, I do remember all of the things that are very important to me, that keeps me grounded during COVID, when I felt like my purpose was going, because my business was closed-ish, although 50% of it came back online, and that's a whole other session. But, you know, I became a governor during those times for a school that was in an area of really, really bad social deprivation. And my husband said, are you crazy? What are you doing? You do not have time to scratch your backside most of the days. And I'm like, I'll find time for this. Because coming back to the point about driving purpose, you will always find time for the things that you're passionate about. So what you have to do is fill your life with things that you feel passionately about. You'll have a really full life by doing stuff like that. And just get rid of the other stuff. You know, if there's people who you're always the first person to text, stop texting. And if they don't text you back, then, you know, if they don't text you to say, I haven't heard off you in a while, you shouldn't have been making the effort to start with, because we've only got a certain amount of time to add value. But during the lows, remember, I have to remember, I am a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a nanny, I'm a friend. You know, all of these things are exceptionally important, and you have got to put yourself first, which sounds really counterintuitive, and there's no way that I ever would have said a sentence that sounds that selfish 5 years ago. But if I don't put myself first, all of those people in that list don't get anything, because my husband's retired, you know, my parents really need me to be the best version of myself when I'm contributing to them. My friend who's been through a desperately hard time over the last 2.5 years, actually, she really, really needs me to be what I need to be for her. If I come in half-assed in a conversation or saying, I've had a bit of a bad day today, she'll look at me thinking I've got, like, you know, I've grown 3 heads. So it's really important that not only do we put the purpose into our jobs, but we put purpose into our lives as well, and make sure that we spend time on enough things that make us joyful.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said. Has anyone got a question? Does anyone want to stick their hand up and ask a question if you haven't got it on the thing? No, nobody being brave enough at the moment. Oh, there's one over here. Can you just wait for the mic? Thank you. If you have got any questions, you can link on Pigeonhole over there and ask a question if you don't want to stick your hand up.
They're basically anonymous because we can't really see any of you.
No, exactly. Hello.
Hello. There's a question for Sarah. You said that the book you're going to write, I'll remind you of it, is the advice you'd give yourself when you were 20 years old. What is that advice? What would be the top 3?
That's such a great question. I was going to ask that at the very end. Well done, Tom. Go on, Sarah, and then I'm going to ask you the same thing.
You'll have to buy Penguin books, $7.99 in about 10 years. So it'll probably be about 70 quid by that point with the rate of inflation. I wish I'd known that it's actually a piece of advice that's been given and, you know, written on memes several times, and I'll never quite get the phrasing right, but you wouldn't worry so much about what people thought of you if you knew how little they did. As in, actually, people don't think about other people that often at all. And I think it's a constant challenge for me today that everybody, we were talking about it actually in the, I'm going to call it the green room because it makes us sound fancy.
Yeah.
It's where the pastries were earlier on. But, you know, it's been desperately, desperately tough over the last couple of years. And getting 999 people happy and over the line was great, but that one person who had quite a loud voice is the one that haunts you. And actually, I should really give myself, my leadership team, my family, whatever it is in that situation, credit for all of the things that you achieved in that moment, not just the thing that you didn't, or the thing that that person has a perception that you didn't, and then, you know, has little manners then to actually say it directly to you. So it's held me back, I would say. You know, really, really wanting to please everybody has actually held me back.
Yeah. Do you always want to please everyone? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a great question, and I'm probably building on Sarah's a little bit. So a similar story. I went to university part-time because I thought it was way too clever to go to school. So I dropped out, and then the first 10 years of my career, I wish I hadn't dropped out and did it part-time. And I think the learning I give is that never try to be anybody than you are. And, you know, I've worked in private equity and now I'm in the PLC world, and, you know, it's quite London centric, right? So I'm a working class lad from Manchester, so you always try and hide that a little bit, but actually just now we're in the process of getting new investors, and people buy people ultimately. So just trying to be in this select band that you are not in is kind of a waste of time. And I think if I knew that a little bit earlier, I wouldn't have wasted quite as much time trying to do that. And actually going back to a role now, so I've never been in South Manchester my whole career. You know, I've been all around the world and I've never been there. And now we've got a factory which is slap bang between Manchester and Liverpool. And, you know, if you'd have spoken to me 12 months, maybe 2 years ago, my accent would have been very different because I tried to lose it a little bit, where now, you know, I can almost go into Scouse or Mancunian. Scouse are not very attractive. You're still videoing this. And therefore, but actually I feel much more comfortable being in that scenario than I actually do in front of a whole room of investors. But actually, when you break that down, those investors are really normal people as well, and who are also putting it on a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No.
I think just being who you are.
I think that you're absolutely right. Being who you are, you know, being comfortable in your own skin. And I think we'll see this throughout the day. It takes time to be like that, doesn't it? It takes time to be in your groove, feel confident. And I think it's really lovely that what we're trying to do now as leaders is enable people to think about that at the beginning of their careers, not at the end of their careers, and not having to, or in the middle of their careers, you know, because by focusing on people, by giving people the opportunity to speak out, by also being kind of more vulnerable as leaders yourselves, we know that we enable people to be themselves. And those people that can be themselves are more effective.
Can I just say one last thing on that?
Yeah.
When I go into a room, I work for LVMH, so LVMH is very French, very male, very white still. And, you know, I don't know whether you can hear this because I've tried to get rid of my accent as well, but I'm actually a Brummie. Yeah, I am from Birmingham. And it's very unusual for women, certainly at LVMH, although it's doubled, the amount of women in senior leadership has doubled over the last 15 years, which is brilliant and a real focus for them. But nobody will remember people unless they've got something very unusual about them, you know, physical standouts, whether it be your accent, whether it be the fact that you're a woman, you know, whatever it comes to. I really, really embrace my difference. I really embrace it. And for any of you who have got a difference that you think may be holding you back, try and flip it on its head and think about it differently, because you'll soon realise that by thinking about it like that yourself, other people will really start to see it as a benefit as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for sharing a little bit about what you're doing and where the future of your businesses look like. You know, really appreciate you being with us both today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.